Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. How are you doing? How are you doing this Wednesday? I am Marissa Alexander, and I am ecstatic to be alive, considering. And we're going to really talk about some experiences that I've experienced, and I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts around them. And my hopes is to reach the people that have endured or is currently enduring a situation for which they know isn't healthy, isn't returning any investments other than pain and suffering, the loss of peace, and just maybe some miserable experiences. And while you got a chance, I'm going to encourage, hope, and pray and give you this information because at this point, you're going to have to leave because there ain't that leopard ain't changing its spots. That's just what this is all about. If you're still there and you've been enduring and dealing with and the same old thing and the same old thing, whoever you hope this person to be, it will not. And no matter how bad you want them to be that or believe that they can, they're not. And so it's not going to change and you can't change them. So you have a decision to make before it's too late. It's the bottom line of the message tonight. Bottom line of the message. I hope you guys are doing okay. I think it's important that we have this conversation because it's a lot of you hear it. I mean, we see it on a microcosm from our relations to people that we know, you know, just different topics locally, and then you see it on a national level, and because I've experienced it to some degree, maybe not necessarily the same as everybody else or different, instances because it's such a complex issue. But the fact of the matter is, once there's an absence of respect, boundary, pushing boundaries is not too far behind. Once there's an absence of respect, violence isn't too far behind. When there's an absence of respect, conflict ongoingly is not too far behind. And when there's an absence of respect, you can almost assure that there's going to be a response in disrespect, and then that's just it doesn't get any better. And just being able to understand the difference between somebody who is understanding and taking accountability, because it's one thing to take a responsibility for something. It's a whole nother thing to take accountability and that work and that effort that goes into doing something about it, not necessarily maybe for another person, but really for ourselves. And so I can tell you my experience with a lot of abusers who don't get to take the responsibility or accountability for their actions because they're a lot of times they are dealt with in terms of people kind of suffer through and keep them around. People are silenced on their behavior. People know what they're doing, but they're kind of mute, like I wouldn't do it, but not necessarily pulling each other's coattail and holding people responsible. And so that's basically one of the things I've seen. Another thing is just that a lot of the abusers are being that they've been through things like we all have. What I have found is a lot of them don't have an anger management issue. And I think that's important for us to recognize. It's not an issue with anger. Okay, they may, for whatever issues that they have internally, the expression of that frustration or that hurt, that pain may resemble, may come out as anger, may come out as aggression. But it's funny how it only comes out on somebody that's weaker, and it don't necessarily have an immediate consequence to it, right? And so oftentimes we are around people we know who we know that they have a reputation for being abusive. And it's kind of one of them things like, well, until somebody dies. And then everybody's like, oh man, everybody loves this person when good and darn well we sat back and we didn't say anything, and it'd be too late. And so I'm just here because I don't want you to go to jail like me. Don't want you to get to the point you're like, you know what? Not today. Not today. I don't want you to leave this earth way before time, because that's literally the end results of a lot of that stuff. Or there's a physical, mental bondage of some sort. Because even if you don't go to jail, you stay in a relationship. I had a lady write me, and she spent 43 years in a marriage with someone that she could not sit down and eat until the food was cooked, and she put it down. And it's just was this ongoing 43 years, y'all. I don't even think Jesus was on the earth 43 years, but you get my point. So it's just a long time, just a long time. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about those things because it's important that we do it. Because here's the thing, it could be anybody. It could totally be anybody. It could be anybody. And the minute we think, oh, that wouldn't happen to me, good. I'm glad. Trust me. I'm glad it wouldn't happen to you. But if we know, we can have a conversation with people that we know it may be happening to, you know, we definitely need to have it with our younger girls and definitely with our younger boys. All this don't need to sit on the girl's lap. And that's another thing that I'm a little frustrated about, because I know we say things like, and it's not in terms of responsibility. When somebody exercises that level of control, manipulation, abuse, or whatever it is, it's not the fault of the person who's on the receiving end, because that's the way the person want to express what it is that's going on with them. But it is our responsibility to not tolerate it. And that's where, you know, we have the most control. And I'm noticing a lot of, you know, situations where we are in these things with men and young men, and we have young girls or other people who look to us in a certain way. And so the example and the exposure to those environments is you know, ongoing and repeated. And so I can tell you, you know, for me, it wasn't something that was a long-term thing. It actually was a pretty quick thing, and it wasn't something that I was okay with my kids seeing. I wasn't even okay with my ex-husband kids seeing. It was one of them things where it was more accepted and more prevalent in that environment from where they came from than it was in mine. And being that I thought that, you know, since I was different in the sense that I don't handle conflict like that, I thought that they would model my behavior. And again, you know, if somebody shows you who they are, you have to believe them. And when they show you over and over, then it's really your responsibility not to keep being, you know, not to keep being shown that over and over, because the leopard doesn't change its spots. And I know a lot of people in situations who are justifying their partner's behaviors, making excuses for them because they have yet to want to take responsibility for what they need to do to gain their power, which is make a decision to leave, especially when they can. So I'm not talking about situations where, you know, it's unfortunate for people to have this one set of income and they can't leave at the moment. I'm not talking about people who, if they did leave, they wouldn't necessarily be homeless to some degree, because I don't know what their shelter experience is like. I don't know that it's 100%, but I do know that it has helped some people. And I don't know what that experience is, but what I can say is I do know people who have left with absolutely nothing, and it was the best decision they ever made, because it made a difference between being in prison physically, you know, or mentally, or possibly being murdered or killed. And that is huge. I think we spend a lot of time on the after the fact, but what I'm really trying to communicate is there's a series of choices. There's a series of things that take place prior to. And if you know somebody, or if you're in that position, absolutely got to understand that those choices that we have, got to take the necessary precautions to make the choice to leave then, because it doesn't ever get any better. And what we see is, oh man, so-and-so boyfriend killed her. Oh, so-and-so. Or you could say, man, she shot up in the air, got 20 years. I'm just saying. There's a lot of women behind bars, y'all, for protecting themselves forever. And so This is very important to me that you all really feel me on that. There was a series of different topics that made it to the media space, and I was frustrated. I didn't necessarily, say anything about it because I was trying to figure out what exactly did I want to say, because I was a little disappointed actually that there were more comments on the fact that the punishment was not as severe, or the coverage was not as severe as another perpetrator who was a Black man. And there is absolutely room for a conversation about the inequitable playing field as it relates to the penal system or even accountability. It's not always equal, and we know that to be true. Obviously, I know that to be true, right? I did have a firearm in my house, stand your ground, and you see where it got me. So I know more than anybody, what that's like. But what we can't do is completely disregard the fact that there were victims and they had no business putting their hand on them. They had no business doing that. And by the time that we got wind of what took place, which was absolutely an escalation, you had better believe that it didn't just start at that one incident. Like, it had been going on ongoingly. They just happened to finally get caught. They just happened to finally have a consequence. So by understanding that there's a duality where it is not fair, it is not the same, the coverage isn't the same, any of that isn't the same. We also have to be mindful of, we just can't get lost in that and forget that there should have been a protection against the woman to begin with. There shouldn't have been any of that to begin with. There shouldn't have been the interpersonal violence to begin with. There shouldn't have been the lack of respect to begin with. And so I don't care who the victim was and what color was the man that she was with, or woman, vice versa. There's a violation that takes place. There's a disrespect that had already been in place, and the violence was just a matter of time before it happened. And I think that is something that we're going to have to look at and say things that we're not necessarily comfortable with. So anywho, I don't know. Let's see here. My friend says, ironically, some victims equate some forms of abuse with love. I believe this is the reason so many stay for extended periods of time. Yeah. If you equate abuse with love, more than likely it's because that's an experience you are familiar with. Oftentimes, people who grow up in homes where there is intimate partner violence or spousal violence, at some point they end up either doing that, perpetrating that behavior themselves, or being subject to that. And like Paul is saying, that they believe that is love, because in their mind, that is what they saw. They see people stick around in it, in what was supposed to be a relationship where two people supposedly love each other, but didn't necessarily display just the fundamentals of respect. And from that point, foundations of trust in compromise and conflict resolution, and call it love, And so to young, impressionable people who maybe not necessarily have been told that outside of that's not right, that's not normal, sometimes often mistake that behavior and that disrespect as love. And honestly, that ain't just a woman thing. That's a male thing too. There's guys that tolerate things from women because of lack of self-love on their part. Sticking with somebody who continuously violates boundaries. You seeing what they can get from you. And if they can't get it, they don't want to be bothered. And depending on who you are, if you want that attention, or you want that, and you actually have the assets and the capital or whatever it is that you have to supply it to them, and you're able to get whatever it is that you want. And I don't know what kind of transactional relationship that is, but sometimes it's not always the case. Sometimes it's really one-sided. Women definitely are just as violent towards men as men are towards women. But what we do know statistically, it's higher with men. And being that, because my experience is that, my interest is in the opposite sex, being that I date men, then that's what my experience is with, and that's where I'm coming from. Oftentimes I do have, women who speak to me about their situations, but honestly, I got men that talk to me about stuff too. I do. And that's a different type of conversation. I'm gonna tell you about a time where I wasn't really sure of myself, and I'm gonna tell you how it kind of started. So in my TED Talk, I talk about a point in my career where I'm starting to question how people perceive me based on the feedback that I'm getting at work. Now, mind you, my work was great. My work wasn't an issue, but people's perception of trying to figure me out, if you will, was difficult, because I'm a thinker. I'm always a thinker. I'm usually with the thinking face, and it's not necessarily that I'm not in a good mood. You know the expression, smile. You guys see you smile. Let me say that to girls sometimes. And so this happened a lot at work, and I really was at a point in my life where I was like, okay, well, for a long time, I was told when I was younger that I was mean. I wasn't mean. I was always a person that set boundaries, and I still am. There's a few people that think I'm mean. I promise you, I'm totally okay with that. I am. I'm okay with you thinking that I'm mean. I don't like it, but I'm okay with it if it means me sacrificing my comfort to make you happy. I'll be mean any day. And then, growing up, just some of the things that I experienced with, the family, because I was just, who I was. I questioned authority, not out of disrespect, but it's caught up with adults having them in positions and compromise and doing things that they shouldn't, because you done told them to respect authority. And you need to be able to distinguish, okay, when this is being asked, when this space is being violated, or when this is being done, and if someone is saying to you, don't say anything, well, why would an adult who I'm supposed to respect and have authority for tell me not to say anything, right? So these are conversations we need to have. So all I'm saying is, as a child, my mama, she made sure she had those conversations with us. And so I questioned authority. Therefore, I was told that I was defiant and mean. So by the time I got to this job and I'm in management position, I'm in a company where I am in a segment of this, I don't know if you want to call it, where it wasn't many Blacks, and it really wasn't any Blacks in management, and it really wasn't any Black, women. But I had gotten to the point where I was like, it don't matter. I'm a manager. I don't care that I'm a Black manager. I don't care that I'm a Black woman manager. I'm a manager. So I should be able to conduct myself like everyone else. And it just really wasn't the case. So it made me question myself. And I started not trusting myself because I wasn't sure of what people was perceiving me as. That ended up me questioning a lot of other decisions, because then I thought, well, is it really me? And let me tell you, that'll throw you off, because if you don't trust yourself, you won't trust the voice that you have. You won't trust the intuition. You'll feel things and be like, and you'll be dismissive of it. You'll start denying it. And that's all because we allow somebody to implant distrust, implant in us a lack of trust in ourselves, because they're questioning it. And essentially all it is let me be who I am and you be who you are. But when people want you to be what they want you to be, or they want you to do what they want you to do, sometimes they're going to make you question, where things, why you are the way you are. And you'll have to make that decision on values and principles at that point. Because at this point, it may be a personality thing, maybe we just oil and water, and you'll know that. Or if it's somebody who's literally trying to be manipulative or exert some level of control over me, or they want me to do this, or they want me to follow the school of fish. And that was my experience. And so it started to have me kind of question other things. And so by the time I was into this relationship, I started to question myself. Am I being patient enough? Because people did say I was mean, and people thinking, maybe it's me. Am my boundaries too hard? Maybe I could just relax them just a little bit. Should I say no all the time? And that's where that lack of trust of myself extended into that relationship. And there's things that I would have normally not been dealt with, I started to allow to happen. And what ended up happening is it was killing my spirit. It was killing my spirit. And by the time I was wrapped up in this relationship, y'all, it was difficult to pull myself out of it. And that's just simply because several things. And we're going to be honest. Because I told y'all this year we was going to be, honest, we were going to be talking about some things. So I'm just here to keep it a buck with you, because I ain't the only Marissa out there. I'm not the only person who had some situation. Maybe you didn't go to jail, thank the Lord. Maybe you sitting there right now and your choices are real slim. Maybe you know somebody who's in something and they catching hell. It's not getting any better. I'm just here to let you know it won't get any better, because a leopard don't change their spots. So I'm in this situation here, and now I'm starting to kind of feel like, I know I don't feel good. I'm compromising a whole hell of a lot, and I don't feel good, because now my boundaries are no more. The respect is gone. And when I enforce a boundary, it's a whole lot of flack. And see, when somebody has respect for you, they come to the table and say, let me help me understand what's going on. And something I'm doing that's bothering you, I don't want to do that. Maybe when you do, I feel this way when you do this. Okay, I apologize. I didn't realize I was doing it. I didn't mean this. And there's a conversation, because that's how you manage conflict. But when you have somebody who's like, the hell with it, my way or the highway, there is no compromise. They don't care nothing about boundaries. They play the victim. And typically, they may stonewall you. They may give you the silent treatment. So you don't necessarily know. They're not really giving you a conversation. When they do give you a conversation about the incident or whatever the disagreement was, they always are right. And you're always at fault. Nobody accepts responsibility. And so I just can say at that point, the decision has to be made for ourselves. Like, you know what? This ain't getting no better. This ain't getting no better. This is not getting any better. And then you start getting to the point where you don't like them. You don't like them. You have short-term memory, especially when y'all fall out. And let me tell you what short-term memory looks like. You have a disagreement. They do all those behaviors. Y'all stop talking to each other for a minute, and then all of a sudden, they may call you back. Now, by this time, you kind of feeling a little sick. You're like, dang, I kind of miss them, and they know it, because this is what they do. Now, there's this language for it. I'm just telling you what they do. They're gonna come back, and it's like, let's talk. They don't want to talk, y'all. They want to make up. Let's just keep it honest. They want to make up. Because if I can make you feel good, I can get you to forget your logic. If I can do that thing I do to you, or if I can buy, those things you like, if I can spend the money on you, I can get you to remember, to discount that long-term memory for a short-term feel good. Whatever it is. If it's money, if it's sex, I don't know. You know what I mean? It could be either one, a combination of both, a trip. I don't know. I guess then the question then becomes, is that what you want ongoingly? Like, is it okay that behavior is followed up with gifts? Is it okay that behavior is followed up with good sex? Is it worth you having, is it worth us having to be treated disrespectfully, physically get beat up? Whatever the case may be, belittled, put down, having to run behind you, and you doing all. Is it worth it? And I guess that's going to have to be a question we're going to have to come up with on our own. That level of sustaining, that level of volatility is detrimental to the spirit, very much the psycho-spiritual spirit. And depending on who some of us are, when we snap, that's also a bad thing because people get hurt, including the person that snapped. So that's just one of the things that I'm noticing a lot of. There's a short-term lapse based on there's a long-term lapse based on a short-term feel good. So whenever that person is constantly showing you who they are, because again, a leopard doesn't change their spots, it's much easier to stay in a position that you already have somebody conditioned to deal with your foolishness than to move around to the next one. Because then I got to condition this person, and if they don't, I might hit a bump or road, and I got to go to this. That's too much work. They don't want to do that. They absolutely want somebody they can run over and have already relaxed their boundaries and know that they can take it so far with them, and all they got to do is do that thing or spend this money or take them this place, and they'll be back. It doesn't get any better. It's just a matter of time. It just doesn't get any better. Let me say this again. It will never get any better. It's not going to change. If you still with him, if you still with her, just know that you got very slim options, and it's just a matter of time before they happen. I don't wish this on you. My prayer is that you leave immediately and don't look back, ever. The other thing that people don't leave because, okay, so there's this example. There's a lady who was with somebody who was excessively lying and mistreating them. And she was tired. And she said that she didn't have the strength to leave. You know how it is when you're just tired of something? And you're like, oh God. You're so exhausted, and your heart's hurting, your mind is always going, your body's always aching, you're still trying to live your life and deal with this too, and you just really don't know how to make whatever it is the decision. And I'm gonna tell you, you don't find yourself in those relationships. You don't sit there and be like, I have dug deep and find. You can't. It's too much going on. It's too much going on. It's like being in the middle of a hurricane and you trying to establish your post and stay there while the winds are blowing. You ain't gonna be able to do it. So you literally have to be separated in order to be able to do that. You got to let that pass, and then you can kind of establish where your footing. You can't do it in those kind of relationships. And she said she didn't have the strength to leave. And I told her that I hope it was a situation where she wasn't, didn't have finances to leave. And I had prayed that it wasn't a situation where she was homeless and she couldn't leave. But if in fact she was in a position to leave, that it wasn't that she didn't have the strength to leave, it was that she didn't have the strength to deal with the unknown. She didn't have the strength to deal with the grief of the loss. She didn't have the strength to deal with her heart breaking. She didn't have the strength to deal with what's going to take place once that ends. What's going to fill that space? What's going to fill that void? Who am I going to talk to? Maybe I'm going to be lonely. Didn't have the strength to confront that. And because of that unknown, she didn't have the strength to move past that discomfort. She stayed in it, and it was suffocating. And so, again, I would like to just say that there is something on the other side of that. There is, once you just go ahead and let your heart break and deal with that disappointment, because it is not going to be easy. But it is never impossible to get over. It is never, once you make that decision, you can get out. It is not impossible to get over it. Give it 3 weeks, give it 3 months, give it, 13 months, and you'll be looked back on it once you have really severed it and be like, whoo, it's so much better. Because let me tell you what's not. You can't come back from death. Can't come back from death. If you take a beating so severe and you don't necessarily die, you're dealing with PTSD, physical ailments, all kinds of other things that take place. Psychological, it can be difficult. The other thing is, if you do get out of it and you end up harming somebody or killing them, then you're dealing with the other impossibility of an issue where you're dealing with the legal system, or you're behind bars, or you got to spend the rest of your life in prison. And if you have family and kids, then they're going to spend that time with you. And so, because we're not talking a whole lot about, what it's like, we see the women that die, we see those things, we don't see the other aspect of it. like I've mentioned to so many people, there isn't but 4 choices. There's life, death, prison, or freedom. That's it. And so my hopes today is that we leave. And I'm gonna deal with the aspect of where I feel like there is a need for us to raise young men and boys that respect women. And there's a lot to that, because women can't own that on their own. And if we know that 1 in 4 women are being abused, then we know that somebody's uncle, daddy, son, cousin is the one doing it. And so we can't absolve, men of the responsibility that they play in raising their sons to be respectful, and then modeling that. So, as much as women have the responsibility of accepting the responsibility of their choice to their own autonomy, agency, and safety, personal accountability to regain their power, taking responsibility for staying, we also have men that have to do the same part in your responsibility of when you set the wrong tone, or when you overlooked one thing, or when you told your son to respect somebody, but then you catcalled somebody else or called a woman name, or you listening to it in the car. It's confusing for them. It sends mixed messages. If you data boy him when he's hooking up with girls, you understand what I'm saying, but you're like, hey, no, don't do this. It's confusing. And so we're just gonna have to have conversations about that. Again, I'm not a man, but I have raised a son, and he doesn't get absolved of the responsibility of being respectful, even if a girl don't respect herself. He doesn't get to partake in her disrespect for herself, because he has respect for himself. I'm 3 minutes over, y'all. You can tell how passionate I am about this. But let me leave you on this lighter note. So Diamonds Forward will be getting out very soon. I want to thank you all for supporting her. I can't wait for her to be home with her baby, little mama. And thank you. And please circulate her petition, because we really need to get those turned into the state attorney to demand for those charges to be dropped. So I'm grateful that she'll be home with her family and her daughter. Unfortunately, I don't want her to be fighting a case at all. It's just a little bit easier to fight a case on the outside. So make sure y'all sign that petition. Thank you for your support. And I appreciate y'all. I'm going to follow up and holler at y'all in this, look at your notes, because I really needed to get this off my chest. Yeah, I don't think you guys have a clue how much I get about people in 2 situations. They're either there and haven't left and it's getting bad, or they're saying, hey, I got an assault charge, or I got this charge because I dealt with this for so long, and it escalated. And so that's why I'm passionate about it. And I love y'all. I love y'all like a fat kid love Fruit Loops at night. All right, y'all take care. Peace out.